Hello. It's a great crowd. Thanks for coming. I'm really excited. This is the second year of the Policy Summit and the first time we've had this presentation competition. It's a great opportunity to be here. I think it's awesome to share research from across the university because so often our departments don't talk. This is great. So thank you for coming. Thanks to GPSS for putting this on. My name is Jason Madrano. I'm a registered nurse. I'm also a graduate nursing student. Looking forward to graduating in about a month with my DNP in community health. Thank you. Not done yet though, so still got a month. I'm going to talk in the next 8 or 9 minutes about, I'm going to argue the case for mobile technology and more specifically text messaging. Then I'm going to tell you about the research I've been involved with for the last 2 years and finally some of the policy implications. So why mobile? Well, it's ubiquitous, right? It's everywhere. 9 out of 10 American adults has a cell phone. When we compare this to other technologies like, for example, television, this year is the first year since the invention of the television that fewer people own a television than did last year. So actually, television ownership is going down. Of course, cell phone ownership continues to climb. But what about texting? Why? Well, to give you a sense of the scope, 2 trillion messages sent last year. That's 6 billion messages every single day, and that's just in the US. Worldwide, we're talking 8 trillion last year, and you can imagine, that was 2011, it's going to be more this year. But there's also some really interesting aspects of texting that make it uniquely suited for public health and community health communications. One of these aspects is it touches the lives of different groups very differently. For example, when we look at racial and ethnic demographics in the US, African Americans, Latinos text more than their white counterparts. We also see some interesting trends when we look at socioeconomic status. When we take, say, computers or the internet as example technologies, generally speaking, the more money you have, the more education you have, the more likely you are to use those technologies. Texting is totally the opposite. We find that the lower income level and the lower education level use texting more. So you can see that texting might really be a great way to bridge some critical communication gaps with underserved populations. Right? These are groups that traditionally public health and community health has had a really hard time communicating with because they're not reached through some traditional channels. One such group is the deaf community. We, over the last 2 years, have had the pleasure of working with Public Health King County on some research. Now, we know that public agencies and public health agencies in particular kind of have trouble communicating with the deaf community because there's a lack of interpreters, there's a lack of adaptive technologies. Beyond that, deaf folks often aren't consumers of traditional public health media channels. For example, not very many deaf folks watch TV. Some of them read the newspaper. You can imagine none of them listen to the radio. And these are kind of traditional methods for getting public health messages out there. But we did know from the literature that the deaf community is a huge adopter of texting. They really use texting a lot. But that was all we knew. We just knew that there was high adoption, high utilization. So we wanted to figure out more why they use texting and how they use texting so that we could inform our communication strategies for public health messages. So we used a methodology called Q. We gathered a whole bunch of deaf subjects from King County and had them organize different statements and then interviewed them on how they organized those statements. And what was revealed from the Q method was 3 different distinct groups of texters. So you can see them up here. They're all a little different. Now, they all text, of course, but all of them think about texting and use texting differently. So, for example, social texters. These people think about texting like it's the best social communication tool of all time. They have conversations all day long via text with many different people all the time. It's their primary mode of communication. Compare that to the informational texters who see texting not as a social communication tool. They don't use it to deepen their relationships. They really just use it for the facts, to send and receive information. And then we also found the convenience texters, different from the other two. They see texting as very convenient, easy to fit into their busy life, more convenient than, say, a video relay call or an interpreter call, but not to the degree that the social texters are really embedded in texting. So it's great. We knew kind of something about our texters, but we didn't really know what kind of messages we could send. So we went back and did some more research, of course, qualitative research to figure out what were the most important aspects of messages that we could send out to the deaf community. And what we found were three really key points. The first, identification. Subjects over and over said it's really important to make sure you include the identifying information for who sent the message, right? So they can trust the sender, so they know it's public health, this message comes from them. The next, more info. Now this is tough because you only got 160 characters. And it's pretty hard to fit a public health message in 160 characters. It's even tougher when you've got to take out some of that to include the sender. And then you've got to include more info. And that's why you've got to include more info. People consistently said, we've got to be able to follow up. If it's a message we're interested in, we've got to be able to go and get more information. So it makes sense. But perhaps the most important was language. And this was something that was new to me, and I want to share it with you. Most deaf people don't speak English as their first language. They learn American Sign Language first. And these languages are distinct. One's phonetic, one's not. And for a lot of deaf people, reading English, especially when it's got complex language, is really difficult, hard to interpret, hard to understand. And so our subjects consistently said, make sure you use vocabulary and syntax that's accessible, that deaf folks could read and interpret and understand. So we knew our users. We had an idea of how to create messages. We were all ready to go. But the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act, familiarly known as HIPAA, has some rules about what kind of information you can and can't send, right? Protected health information, private health information. Now, HIPAA was enacted in 1996, and it's great, right? The whole idea is to protect our information, to have severe penalties for breaches of that confidence, right? But when it was enacted, 1996, 16 years ago, the #1 phone on the market was the Motorola StarTAC, not text capable. You can imagine that the designers of HIPAA had no real idea how texting could even play into personal private health information, right? So HIPAA's great, but it wasn't timely enough. Just a reminder, the #1 hit single in 1996 was the Spice Girls' Wannabe. So this gives you, the world is a different place now than it was 16 years ago, right? In some ways different, in some ways the same. So, what do? I see a bright future for a variety of communication methods, not the least of which is texting. But we can't do it right now, because the consensus among public agencies, public health agencies, is despite the fact that there's no specific language in HIPAA about texting, right? It doesn't say whether you can text or not. Agencies are conservative, right? They're risk averse. Of course, we can understand because those penalties are huge. So right now, agencies don't send any protected health information via text. What we need, this is the policy, we need a reevaluation. We need to look at what communication modes are being used by these populations who we really want to connect with. And texting really is that line between public health agencies, community health agencies, and these underserved populations. Thank you very much, and here's the team that I worked with. It's been a great honor.